Welcome to the July 9th, 2018 meeting of the Marquette City Commission. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Would you please rise with me as we say the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Clerk, could we please have the roll call?
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Frazier? Here. Commissioner Plord?
Here.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Here.
Commissioner Schlegel?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stonehouse?
Here.
Mayor Campana?
Here. Okay, Commissioners, you have the agenda in front of you. Do I have a motion to approve it? Commissioner Frazier.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Would there be a second? Commissioner Reynolds.
Second.
All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? That carries 7-0. We come to announcements. I would like to mention that tonight, in regards to committees and boards of the city has approximately 20 boards and committees made up of resident volunteers. These committees exist to study and advise the city on areas of concern within the city. A couple of them that have openings are the Board of Zoning Appeals, of which we have 5 openings. And we have the Harbor Advisory Committee has 4 openings. In total, we have 8 committees, and there are 19 openings spread amongst those committees. So we could use some volunteers if at all possible. Volunteers have to give a few hours a month. Helps make Marquette a better place, an opportunity to do something productive, meet some good people, and again, to help make Marquette a better place. If you want to volunteer, you want to step up, please feel free to contact any of the commissioners, call the city manager's office, or go online. We always depend upon our residents to help out. Second, I would like to mention that on Sunday, July 15th, that's this coming Sunday at 2 p.m., we're going to have the dedication of the Father Marquette statue downtown. It'll be a nice ceremony. We've done a lot of work down there. It's a very beautiful accomplishment, and if you have a chance, you should be down there to see it and participate with us. One last announcement. On July 20th through the 22nd, we're going to have the annual Hiawatha Traditional Music Fest. This year, it will be the 40th anniversary of this festival. This is a festival that people work on all year. It brings a lot of people to Marquette, and it's always a good time. So if you haven't been there, you should try to, at one time, at least try to make it. Again, the date on that is July 20th through the 22nd. Next, we're going to move to public comment. Our first public comment of the evening. Public comment is when residents may address the commission on whatever they wish to speak on, or if someone wishes to reserve time to speak on one of the upcoming business items on the agenda, they can do so at this time. So I'm going to open public comment. We're going to give you 3 minutes. We need your name and your local address. Would anyone care to address us at this point?
My name is Robert Kulishek, 617 Hampton. I would like to have the opportunity to address the commission on agenda item number 3.
Frank Jeff Verdo, 350 East Ridge, Marquette, to speak on items 3 and 7. These are my opinions. June 25th, the manager said Lighthouse Park was open to the public, and he accepted responsibility for not yet having the northwest fence removed. He wasn't aware that his staff hadn't removed a park closed sign, which would lead anyone to think none of the park was open. My comment correctly stated that the park was not yet open to the public as of June 24th, not until the last sign was removed. 2 more weeks and still the ugly fence remains. June 25th, Mr. Schlegel said the red caution flag was not up at Picnic Rocks. That positively gives the appearance that swimming is allowed. The manager responded that the pole was damaged during the storm. That's no excuse in a life and death situation when we know people will swim and drown there. The pole looked fine yesterday. They've had 2 weeks to restring the flag. Complacency has set in. While we thank Mr. Stonehouse for his excellent safety tips 3 meetings in a row, he's off base with his comments about our lower harbor, then versus now. He chose not to divulge that the easternmost third of the rail yard was more gorgeous 15 years ago before any new development went in, and the view from US 41 was to die for. The Father Marquette view was also nicer, even with the ugly storage tanks, because the lake was visible beyond them and to the sides. A lot of us also admired the wooden trestle, which added to the ambiance. Now a building with a larger and much closer footprint blocks the view. Mr. Stonehouse only told us what he wanted people to hear. This next comment exemplifies how I handled business differently than this board, and that I'm willing to acknowledge both sides of an issue. The public should realize that throughout the planning process, buildings over 35 feet were proposed on the north end of the rail yard and only there along our lakeshore. Our view was intended to become blocked from Father Marquette Park, but with multi-use buildings of businesses and residences to provide an aesthetically smooth transition from lake to downtown. Instead, we see a standalone building. Hartwood is off to a shaky start, being that none of 7 members acknowledged, sought out, or even mentioned the original city news release that called for the development of up to 356 acres of the 2,373. Mr. Fraser claimed there was not much room for debate on the strategic plan. He just heard concerns about the plan's objective to develop Hartwood as the ad hoc committee dictated. All 7 bought into a lie by ignoring the news release. Note that on June 11th, the chair stated that the intent was to develop it, implying more than 356 acres. The manager later reminded us that the city can only develop what's in our city limits. How then was a committee that operated under this board allowed to recommend what was developable in the township portions? Every color on that map deserves a public process, especially when 100 of the 356 acres were already sold to the landfill, 70 of them foolishly.
Hi, I'm Carol Falsher. I live at 916 High Street here in Marquette, and I'm also the administrator of the Iron Ore Heritage Rec Authority, and I would reserve time or be here for item number 5, the resurrection of the Carp River Beehive Kiln.
Andrea Ingmeyer, 30 Heidi Drive. I also here representing Peter White Public Library for agenda item number 6, if anyone has questions about that.
Tom Veer, 431 East Ridge. I'd like to reserve time for item number 3.
George Meiser with GEI Consultants, and I'd like to speak to item number 7 or answer questions when we get there.
I'm Mary Beth Carsons. I live at 1714 Fitch Avenue in Marquette, and I'm here again this year post 4th of July fireworks to readdress the blowing off of mortar-type fireworks in dense residential areas of Marquette. First of all, I would like to thank the city for adopting the Michigan Fireworks Safety Act of 256 of 2011 last year and stating it clearly in the on the city website. But I do believe that we need to take that state law a few steps further. Again, in my neighborhood, we were inundated by mortar types fireworks going off on July 3rd and July 4th. And I believe that the timing is okay, the state law, but I believe that there is definitely where these mortar type fireworks are being shot off needs to be addressed. There's a time and a place for everything, and mortar type fireworks in the city residential areas is not the place. So how my story unfolds is, again this year, I made 3 phone calls to the local police department, 2 resulting in visits to my neighborhood on Wednesday morning post Tuesday evening mortar blow off 54 feet from my home. We resulted in a bag of ember remains, some of which were hot, that my husband and I sat on our porch, listened to them tinker down, saw them fall on our porch floor, on our porch roof, landed on our picnic table, throughout our side yard, and actually was visited by a very kind police officer Collins, and he said, you know, ma'am, I'm really sorry. I understand your frustration. You know, I'll walk around, I'll document this, but there is nothing that I can do. My hands are tied by the state's law. The following night, I ended up calling the police after mortars were bombing off 24 feet directly west of my residence. But finally, I was able to call and report a violation because now the mortar shooters were now in the middle of the road shooting off this huge mortar Roman candle, and the effects of that were shooting into my yard, and I knew that this was illegal. So called the police, and they said, well, you know, it's a busy time. We just got over the fireworks. We'll try and do our best. And I just said, you know, I appreciate that. I'll be waiting on my porch. I'll wait here all night if I have to, but it needs to be addressed because it's illegal. So when I approached both of these mortar shooters, they were both appearing like they had been drinking. They bullied me. They swore at me. And so basically I went home and was feeling very frustrated. I do feel, I did talk to
Mary
the
Beth,
city.
The 3 minutes is up.
Okay, all right.
There is a
Thank-
second session if you.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, I'm Tim Clancy. I live on Longyear Avenue in Marquette. I'm a 28-year resident. I've taken care of my property, and I get along great with my neighbors, except on the day before 4th of July and the 4th of July. I'll second everything Mrs. Carson's just said. I'm a block away from her. I cannot imagine how loud it was at her house. Because at our house, it's like bombs going off. It shakes the windows. It frightens everybody. We shake when it hits. It's like a bomb going off. There's a gentleman on my street that lives very close to me who's a war veteran. Last year when this happened, he was very upset. And if it weren't for he and I walking over and talking to some of these guys that were doing this, who knows how long it would have gone on. But they smiled at us and said, we know the law. We know that this is legal. We know we can do this until 1 a.m., so good luck. Don't waste your time bothering us. And we tried to be civil about it. We tried to engage them in a civil conversation about it, but that was last year. This year, we tensed up on the 3rd of July, and just like clockwork, the same thing. It's like a cannon going off in your neighborhood. This is closely aligned homes in a sort of an urban environment. I mean, it's a small town, but it's a lot of homes very close together. If you've ever been in North Marquette, that's the way it is, and it's not that unlike that in a lot of places in Marquette. But it's super loud, it's obnoxious, it's dangerous, and there is something we can do about it. We can petition the state. State of Wisconsin, our neighbor. The state of Minnesota, our neighbor. The state of Ohio, our neighbor. All have laws that do not allow anyone to blow off anything that explodes or flies. That's the law in those 3 states. If it explodes or flies, it's illegal unless you have a permit from your local government, a certification from your local government, and insurance to back up a house that catches on fire because of your incompetence. In 28 years, I haven't come to a commission meeting and complained about anything. The police are very helpful when we have problems, issues with all kinds of things that might arise in the neighborhood, but they're always helpful, they're always friendly, and we get great service from the police. We highly respect them. But when we called this time, because we did, they said, sorry, there's nothing we can do about it until 1 a.m. And this was after midnight when we called. This state law is a bad law. It needs to be dealt with. It needs to be adapted somehow so that people can still enjoy fireworks, but so that people with dogs, babies, there was a baby somewhere in our neighborhood that was crying really loud. You could hear it at our house right after these fireworks started. We've got war veterans, we've got puppies, dogs, people, just ordinary people who just want peace and quiet. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Susan Oline, live at 1710 Fitch Avenue, right next to Mary Beth and Paul Carson. And we heard the same thing, okay? Now the gentleman mentioned about laws in Green Bay. Here's what Green Bay's law states. The plain and simple answer is that if you're not a professional fireworks company, then it is extremely difficult to obtain a permit. To get the permit, you must have $5 million umbrella insurance policy. You must have a site plan which details where you'll be lighting them off, and the appropriate National Fire Protection Association recommended distance. And you must have an alcohol, tobacco, firearm notice clearance. I cannot understand why this city cannot put in regulations that at least ask these people to submit a permit. Require these people to put a permit in, because just about everyone on that street was drinking, and yet our police said their hands were tied. But the state law says if you are drinking, you're not supposed to be firing these things off, okay? I just feel that the city can approach this problem and resolve it by asking for a written permit from the people that are firing these. If there's no permit there, then the city has a right to stop it right then and there. And basically, that's all I have to say. There are other cities in the state of Michigan that are trying to approach the same problem. It's a huge problem. It's just not here. And they're doing the same thing. They're looking for ways around it. Port Huron, they go by noise and damage control to other property. When you get all this stuff falling on your house, sooner or later there's going to be a fire. And I pray to God it's not in my neighborhood. But when you have these mortars going off and embers falling on pine trees, with our high level of fire danger right now, sooner or later it's going to happen. And why is it going to have to take this commission or the city for something drastic to happen before you act? I'm asking you people to act on this. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Paul Karstens. I live at 1714 Fitch Avenue. I just wanted to continue the comments on the fireworks. This afternoon I was working on my garage in the back of the house and looked up and observed the medical helicopter coming over my house, which it routinely does on the way to the hospital. Last year I brought this same issue up because it's still a concern of mine, not of these mortars going off. And I've looked it up in the FAA for fireworks, and they're basically concerned of airports. And they say, well, when you come into an airport, it's restricted. You can't blow off a firework, right? Well, we're not an airport, but we have a heliport. And I don't know what the plan, I know there's a plan where the helicopter is supposed to fly. My concern is that one day, it hadn't happened this year, but the people have, if they have the right to shoot it off on their property, the FAA says, well, some of them might go up as high as 900 feet. Now, normally you come in, I'm a pilot, normally you don't overfly a city lower than 1,000 feet. So that's their thing as well. It's safe because pilots aren't supposed to go below 1,000 feet over the city. The helicopter comes in over my house not at 1,000 feet. He's coming in on an approach that's agreed upon with the hospital and the city. My concern is it safe? My last thing I wanted to bring up was my wife did call the fire chief asking about anything safety-wise that we could do, and he said basically his hands were tied by the rules and laws that, as they are right now, that basically we can sit out on our porch with a fire extinguisher and a hose. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Vivian Lasich, Lasich, live at 508 Pine Street in Marquette. I would like to reserve the opportunity to address item number 3, but if I may take just a moment to also say thank you to each and every one of the individuals who have spoken relative to the fireworks issue. I called the city police on the 4th of July. A very gracious conversation. There was nothing that they could do. I did direct that a call would go to the city manager because I feel that this is a concern. And all of the things which have been stated have such validity. I would hope that you could, as a collective body, recognize this, the situation that is presently in existence cannot continue. It would seem to me that this has been properly brought to your attention, and should an incident occur, that the city is going to feel very bad, if not have some liability. I'm not in the law business. I can't tell you that. But the displeasure, and yes, all I could do when I was sitting there listening to all of that was think of those who have suffered from being in the military. I can remember when I was losing my husband in the middle of the summer, and certainly that happens in more homes than we can even begin to count. The little boy who's next door to me. I love Marquette. We as voters have entrusted that love to you. Item 3, please.
Thank you.
Matt Ludenberger, 1406 Garfield Ave here in Marquette. I'd also like to echo those statements. First and foremost, thank you to everyone who's come out. This is the only public spot you can repeat and reinforce that there are ways that you can act, and there are only ways that you can act. It's not something we can do, and it's obviously not something the law enforcement can do anything about. It's up to you guys to come up with the right wording and the right discussion and the right place to put it. I would have to remind you that we have spent many hours talking about Airbnb rentals in town, the permits required for all of that. There are permits required for any fencing that you might do to your house. So in general, it wouldn't take a lot to make, say, the 4th of July in the city of Marquette a permit fireworks only center. I've asked to launch model rockets to teach kids about rocketry, and I've been denied because they go too high or they might light a house on fire when they land. Those were the real discussions that I've had, and to hear that on the 4th of July I could light things off that actually do blow up in space, it boggles my mind that there isn't a way that you can figure out somehow, A, get the responsibility parties, or get the parties responsible to be responsible for themselves, and B, to answer all of these concerns. Apparently it's not new. Please take this time to think about that. I would like to speak on number 7 when it finally comes up, but at the same time, I'm gonna go back to the rocket thing and say that we keep hearing discussions. It's been about a month since I sent you a letter. And we keep hearing discussions about we don't know what's going to happen to the hospital, we don't know what's going to happen to the power plant. I would like to say right now that in the space world, in the dark sky world, Mars right now is the closest it's been since 2003. So any backyard telescope will be able to pick up the dust storm that's currently happening on Mars. So I please encourage everybody to go out. With that, though, the power plant has enough electricity generated to power a deep space network for radio telescopes. That's something we can't get back. So in the sense of how do we market ourselves as a city, we could market to, and please, anybody who knows me knows how hard this is for me to say, but we could market ourselves to that generation of endeavors, like President Trump says, rich men like rockets. So if we're looking for money, let's help them create their dreams. Let's us, since we are above the 45th parallel, we have a better angle towards the deep space. We could utilize that power plant right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Would anyone else like to address the commission?
Excuse me, I'm Mona Lang, 175 Pine View Drive in Marquette, and I'm the Executive Director for the Downtown Development Authority. And I would like to reserve some time to speak on item 3 and also available to answer questions from the DDA board's perspective on that item. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the commission? Anyone? Seeing no one else, we're going to close this portion of public comment. We are going to move to our one presentation of the evening. That presentation is the Marquette Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. We have Executive Director Sherry Davey here. Sherry, if you'll take the podium on the side, please.
Thank you, and good evening. With me, I have the Secretary of our board, David Allen. Our chair may be joining us later, but she's given us the authority to run with the show, so here we are. Been a busy year, a very, very busy year, and we have, I think, some pretty good things to report to you. Let's see here. Not sure where we're moving here. Nope, this is it. Okay, very good. We were obviously established by all of you to facilitate revitalization of contaminated, blighted, functionally obsolete, and historic property. I think when you look up and down some of our streets, you'll see that that's taken place pretty effectively. The challenge, extraordinary cost to redevelop brownfield properties that threaten economic viability. And I think that's really kind of an important thing to think about with our board, and I know David will support this. When folks come to us and they want to access brownfield funds, the board puts them through quite a bit of rigor because we value those tax dollars, and we're not going to just let them go wherever without some real commitment on the part of the developers and to ascertain the need. You know, would this project happen if brownfield funds weren't available? And I'm very pleased to say that in all of the projects that we've been involved with, that's been the common denominator. It wouldn't have happened if brownfield hadn't been there. So we take that very, very seriously. It's an awesome tool, being able to go to the state and have them work with us to bring in funds that wouldn't be there ordinarily. And the brownfield plans, of course, are approved by the EMBRA and the City Commission. So I think they're pretty fully vetted before they go any direction. And then for the state tax capture, Act 381, approved by EMBRA in this state. This is your board, and you have done an awesome job of creating a board of people that have a very wide mix of background and experience, and sometimes it's been difficult to have a full board, and I'm so pleased to say that we do this year have a full board. We've operated with down to about 5 over the last few years because brownfields are complicated. And sometimes people say, I don't know what a brownfield is, and I don't know if there's something I can bring to this, but I can assure you, the people that you have brought to the board have done an amazing job. And we have a lot of new people, but the caliber of people that are coming forward are those that want to know that they want to have all the information. Just today, I had a meeting with one of our newest board members that had a number of questions that he wanted to make sure that when he goes out and speaks to the public, that he's presenting what brownfield is and how it works. We have had wonderful experiences with your city staff. They're very, very supportive. We so appreciate Jen and working with Dennis and Gary and your city manager. We feel very well supported. I also want to comment, there are two other additional people that aren't on this list, and one of them is Mac McClellan, who is our consultant, who's had 20 years of experience in brownfields and has been amazing, particularly looking at the DLP project, which is a very unique project. There probably isn't one across the nation that was as complicated as that one. Taking over land, rebuilding, removing, replacing, working with state, federal, and local agencies. He's done an awesome job. And I have to acknowledge Bill Davey for his support of our, all of the photography and layout and design of our project that went to the national conference this year and got us into some national recognition. So we have a pretty good team working. The development agreement is very important, and the DLP, I think our current mayor was one of our board members at the time that we were going through all those things with DLP, and that was one of those projects that took years, not months, and took a long time to decide how and why and how to get it carried out, and it worked out very well. So that spells out all of the details regarding the brownfield development. And the bond issue takes top priority for captured taxes so that when you step out behind us, the Brownfield Authority can issue bonds, but obviously we can issue them at a much better rate with the city behind us. And fortunately, in practically every case, other than one very small bond issue, that didn't happen, but with the city behind us, we can do some pretty amazing things, but the city and the bond issues take top priority. So then we have Founders Landing with the condominium units, and the Hampton, which continues to be pretty amazing when you look at the kinds of occupancy they have had through the years, the jobs that have been put there, and to walk down on the boardwalk and know that that's there because of brownfield dollars. And the next phase of One Marquette Place, I hope many of you had the opportunity to go over and tour the facility that they now have available. And the peer development, which is out there, will be something that the city can determine in its future what they want to do with that. When the first brownfield plan was developed, it brought in a marina and all of the other components. The money is there for those, but it will depend upon what the city wants to do with this. The pilings turning into capacity for larger ships to come in that have not had the availability to do so in Marquette. But that is, that's a possibility. And I did want to comment on the Father Marquette dedication. I'm really pleased that the Founders Landing project played a small role in that, because there was a component of that they needed some assistance with, and the Founders Landing group stepped up to the plate and said, yep, we can do that. So their brownfield component of it led to some of the support for the Father Marquette Park. And Liberty Way, what can I say? Any of you, when I moved here 18 years ago, and the bakery was there, and then the bakery wasn't there, and then there was nothing there. and to see what has happened here. It's incredible. And I have to say, they are amazing partners. They have someone at our brownfield meetings every month, and when we ask for data or information, it's there. So I have nothing but appreciation for our partners. Whoops, I'm on the wrong place. I'm sorry. For our partners at Liberty Way. And the current jobs in Phase 1 and Phase 2, Staybridge Suites, 29 jobs, M-Bank, 43, UPHP, 157. That even exceeded what we anticipated last year. And I don't know how many were employed at the bakery, but I suspect it wasn't that many. So, and just to see the vitality of that area that has been created by the Liberty Way project, the people that have confidence and want to come in and build next door and across the street, I think that speaks extremely well for the project. And nestled down. One of the interesting things, and I may have shared with this with you at other meetings I've been at with you, but when I went to the national conference, one of the things, a lot of the folks in Pittsburgh, they were there from across the nation, but one of the things they were amazed at is we had the large DLP and we have the small, and they were really impressed with what's going on in Marquette. And Nestled Down continues to do very well. They're fully booked this month, have had great occupancy, and I think they are on TripAdvisor. They just were recognized for being 18 of 25 of one of the best places to stay. And I think when you look at our very first extended stay per the Viridia project, in our very first B&B in Marquette, I think, you know, Brownfield has had a pretty nice role in that. And the development of the hospital, I know, I'm sure everyone as they drive by it are amazed that every day it's getting ready. And as a Youper, I'm just so excited because this is a UP project in addition to a Marquette project. It's going to serve so many people for so many decades. They have participated with us at the monthly meetings, and we're hoping to have them at the next monthly meeting, but they follow up monthly with city and brownfield staff so that we are all on the same page so that we can see the accomplishments that are happening, and they are on schedule and in some cases ahead of schedule. And of course, our amazing municipal service center. It's incredible to go in there and to see a building like that sitting in the city of Marquette and to see the efficiency of it and the roundabouts and all of the things that have fallen into place as a result of this project. This was the budget that was presented. Pardon me. You'll note that there was an amendment to the agreement in the fall, which bumped it up a bit. And the reason for that was because there were some federal requirements as part of the McClellan extension. And again, this was a project working with not only state but federal agencies. And what I find most amazing is that we have this project and we got everybody to the table, community, local, federal, and state, to do this amazing project. One of the interesting things that we will be embarking on since the passage of the LDFA to access the funds, the TIF funds in the city. We will be working with them we've not yet had a project that we have crossed the LDFA lines or the DDA lines. And the three agencies have been looking forward to the opportunity to do this. The Brownfield has reached out to both agencies. We have worked with DDA in communication for a number of years. We've not had the opportunity, other than a kind of an introductory meeting with the LDFA, to discuss how we're going to handle this. But the one meeting we did have was very cordial and very supportive, and I anticipate that this is not at all going to be an obstacle for any of the three agencies. And as a matter of fact, we do have a project that we are going to be looking at in the next couple of weeks. The Brownfield will be on their agenda to discuss a project to see how we are going to benefit the city by the project that wants to come in. And I basically covered this, that we will be going to the DDA, obviously, if we have a project in their district. So these are the key projects for 2017, 2018. I've just given you the review of those. I think up and coming, the support for Cliffstyle is going to be a pretty big issue for Brownfield. We stand prepared, obviously, to support that. Founders Parcel 2 and the former hospital as needed. We will continue to promote the Brownfield Authority, and we did do the presentation of the Brownfield project on a national scale at Pittsburgh in December at the National Brownfield Association. Let's see if there's anything else here. And this is a photo of the recognition that the city of Marquette was given at the EPA National Conference in Pittsburgh in December. And I was very pleased to be there on behalf of your city, our city, to accept this award. And it recognized not only the most current Brownfield projects, but all of the work that's been done by the city of Marquette. And at that meeting, we also were recognized with our poster of the Brownfield Authority, recognizing the accomplishments of where we came from and where we're going. And I can assure you we are going some pretty neat places, and we're delighted to be part of the process. I guess I would ask my secretary if you have some comments to make.
Just a couple, yeah. I spent about 25 years working on Superfund projects around the country, and I wanted to try to just very quickly, in a couple of minutes, give you some perspective about how important this is and how well Marquette's doing on a national scale. It's been an issue for 5 decades. Back in the 1970s, Love Canal in New York became emblematic of hazardous substance problems across the country that were beyond the reach of governments to fix with normal budgets, that were beyond the ability of civil suits to fix with liability schemes. And this led to Congress passing the Superfund law in 1980 and amending it in 1986. And the Superfund law is very famous for empowering EPA and the states to do cleanups, to use the Superfund to do those cleanups and to then recover the money from responsible parties. But that's not the brilliant part of Superfund. The brilliant part of Superfund is that it created overnight a liability scheme which transformed the private sector overnight. All of a sudden, the private sector policed itself. Every insurance company, every bank, every property owner, every real estate agent suddenly had to pay attention to what were the issues about hazardous substances historically and looking into the future. And this changed how business was done in the country. It goes way beyond governmental agencies and the cleanups that you hear about. And it has it's internalized this market externality that was never addressed. But it had one unintended, well, probably more than one, but one very important unintended consequence, and that's where brownfields come in. All of a sudden, you had innocent landowners and innocent financial institutions that were hit with liability or worried about liability,
and this caused nearly everybody to be scared to death of industrial properties. I don't want to develop an industrial property because there may be liability, and there's no getting away from it under Superfund. So a whole bunch of reforms started to occur in the 1990s to put the liability scheme in a little bit more fair terms. And then people started to realize we can actually start to move developers and industries back into these brownfield areas. So instead of getting rings of green properties developed and leaving the old ones behind, suddenly we're looking for ways to get the old ones redeveloped. And that's where brownfield, that's where this whole program comes in. That's where all these taxing authorities have come in, shields from liability, et cetera, et cetera. And the very strongest version of that is when we have a local redevelopment authority like we have in Marquette and a localized zone where that's targeted. And so you should be proud that you have those things going on here. I'm certainly proud to be part of it. And as Sherry has just demonstrated, you've had tremendous success here over the last several years, and I think we'll have a lot more success in the years to come.
Any questions?
Thank you. Questions?
Sorry.
Commissioner Schlegel.
Just a comment, and I'm glad that there's as many people here tonight as there are, because this is what it's all about. This volunteer group, these guys put so much time in, done so many great projects. I've been able to work on some of them personally, very proud of that. But it just is such an amazing transformation that we've seen with those properties, and thank you for all your hard work. I get excited about brownfield. You know, if I wasn't doing this, I'd be over there on your committee right now, as soon as I got done with Planning Commission. But anyway, the fact is that it's just really just an amazing program that you guys have been running with, and thanks for working with the city as much as you have, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Ms. Davey, briefly, could you explain to people tax increment financing, the concept of how the brownfield gathers its money and how it spends it, just in case people don't quite understand?
Okay, well, basically, we can look at the example of Marquette General, which didn't pay any taxes to the local entity. They were a nonprofit. So when you develop the new hospital and you take, well, I guess, I don't know if that's the best example, but you take a piece of property that isn't paying taxes or very minimal taxes because it's been deserted, left behind, whatever, and then you build something with it. And so then you increase the tax value of it with whatever you're going to put in there. So then as that value goes up, you take the difference between nothing and this, and you apply that. Those are the brownfield taxes. But I think the thing that people need to be aware of is people still pay taxes on that. It's not like, you know, you don't have to pay taxes on this anymore. The people that build this pay the taxes, and that's where this incremental funding comes in. That is the difference between a smaller flat amount and a larger amount once you have greater value. And then at a certain period of time, like in the last 5 years of the program, then you can, once everything is paid off, whether they're bond funded, once everything is paid off, they are reimbursed for the cost. They pay the costs up front. They pay their taxes as usual, but they get reimbursed for those taxes as they go along. And then ultimately, the value goes back to the city and those tax entities once all of that is done.
And can I just add too? Yeah. I mean, one of the keys is this increased tax revenue that's available to pay back developers is key, because these properties often have expenses that are higher than a normal clean property. So brownfield allows those increased costs to be borne through this tax authority. So essentially the developers are paying with the taxes they would be paying in the future to do these cleanups and additional work. And you can also do things like infrastructure and some other things, which makes it much more palatable. So this increases the odds tremendously that a property that people don't want to touch suddenly becomes a property that is attractive.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. And thank you and your Brownfield Committee for all you do. I mean, the Brownfield's been involved in all the major construction that's been going on in the city the last, say 2-3 years, but it's actually been 10-15 years. So without your help, I don't think this would have happened. So thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Thank you. As I said before, it's a team. All of us.
Okay, next we're going to come to the consent agenda. I would need a motion to approve the consent agenda. Commissioner Reynolds,
I move that the consent agenda be approved.
would there be a second? Commissioner Plord,
I'll second.
all those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? That carries 7-0. Okay, we have one unfinished business item for the evening. That item is the purchase request for city-owned property, parcel 0151053, and a portion of parcel 0151030. City Clerk, could you please give us the background?
Thank you, Mayor. Background. The City Commission previously adopted a resolution of intent to sell, which directed the city manager to negotiate a sale of the property and bring back the sale to the City Commission for final approval. The city manager, community development director, and city attorney are confident that, after several negotiation sessions with Viridia Group, the terms presented in the attached purchase and development agreements will provide for sale and development of the property in agreeable terms to protect the city of Marquette while fostering development that will significantly increase the tax base of the downtown without seeking any public funding or commitment. Fiscal effect: the city will realize a one-time revenue of $221,000, 100% of the appraised price of the property, for the sale of the property and subsequent tax revenue from the development of the property. Recommendation: adopt the resolution of sale and direct the city manager and attorney to complete the sale. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Thank you. So we had a number of people who would like to wish to speak on this topic. The first was Mr. Kulishek. We have 3 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the commission. I'm speaking on behalf of the Jansen House. I'm a member of the board. I would like to suggest that the City Commission put this project in a somewhat broader perspective with a special concern for water runoff issues. There was a flood that happened a couple of years ago, and it flooded the downstairs, the shelter area of the Jansen, causing several $1,000s worth of damage. I think this is an example of what we need to take into consideration as we move forward with this project. I have no problem with the project as is being proposed, but what I'm suggesting is that as we look to this project, we should be concerned about the broader issues of water runoff. What's happened over the past several years is that more and more of the surface area in the downtown has been paved, and more water is coming down when a storm takes place. Also, storms are becoming more frequent and more intense. So what used to be a 100-year storm or a 50-year storm now is happening several times a decade, and we have to take that into consideration. And building also has an influence. I'll use once again the Jansen House problem as an example. When the county built the Transit Authority building, that now serves as basically a wall that channels water that comes down the street over to the Jansen, whereas previously it used to run right across an empty lot and then go down to the lake. So I think as you move forward with this project, we on the Jansen board and many of the other property owners in that area would like to be kept informed and also have an opportunity to participate in the planning to make sure that this water issue is addressed, because this is something that I think the city has been aware of for some time. There are short-term fixes which we're certainly looking at, but there's some major infrastructure that probably needs to be addressed, and this would be as good a time as any to factor that into the planning process. with the Planning Commission and other agencies within the city. So we would request that that be taken into consideration, that the Jansen House and the other property owners in the area be given the opportunity to be aware of what's going on and have an ability to participate. One final thing with regard to the Jansen is we are interested in making sure that we retain access to the northern part of our building, which would be the part closest to this new development in terms of being able to have access to that. So we want to take that into consideration. So we hope you go forward with the project, but take these factors into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Verito?
Right, Jeff Verito, these are my opinions. The description for this item on our agenda reads, purchase request for city-owned property. No location is mentioned except in the supplement, which most people who pick up an agenda don't read. This board is reminded for the umpteenth time to provide an adequate description on the agenda itself, especially in this case where there's ample room on the page. We find ourselves in a situation where another rare piece of property is on the market, this one probably the most central building site in our entire area. Although not by the lake, this prime downtown parcel calls for a building that is worthy of the location. Although this group's addition to Marquette's West End looks attractive, the downtown site calls for even greater creativity in design. We're hoping for incredible facades in every direction, ones which will stand the test of time. Missing in the packet is any sort of rendering to give us an idea of what the architect has in mind. Yes, it's early in the process, however, any entity that's entertaining purchase options ought to give the public an idea of how the building might appear. The preliminary description sketch that's provided is not suitable. Perhaps that doesn't matter. After all, we've seen building plans magically disappear and change for the worse on other major developments. Or perhaps the commission will figure they did a good job on the West End, so we'll trust them. Even if this assertion carries some merit, our citizens would appreciate a rendering or conceptual drawing. And what plans are in place for parking during the construction phase and to replace parking taken up by users of the new building? People are also interested in what services the building will contain, since the lot is zoned for most non-industrial uses. Retail on the entire first floor sounds nice, with a floor or two of offices above and living space above that. This site should accommodate a fairly tall building if parking options allow. Rare as this opportunity is, doesn't the $221,000 purchase price seem a tad low? Even if that's fair market value, can we not charge what we please, since this is a one-time transaction on one of our last key downtown parcels? We've got the time to wait, as long as necessary.
Mr. Veer?
Excuse me, thank you. Tom Veer. Mr. Verito had some good comments there. I don't necessarily disagree. My name is Tom Veer once again. I own the property across the street from this property. I've talked with City Manager Angeli about this property previously. I've been working on a project myself, and I have some renderings, and I think Frank was very true and correct, and there should be something in front of us that shows what might possibly be done. A few things on the agreement also. It's a pretty interesting agreement that allows Viridia Group to have a 1-year due diligence period on a piece of property, 5% down with a $221,000 purchase price, which I agree with Mr. Verito is, it may be appraised value, but I don't know where the appraisal came from and how it is appraised. The time frames are pretty interesting as far as that due diligence period. And there's a 3-year period after that due diligence period, I believe, to put a project together, and then another 30 months to build that project. And I'm concerned that the city was very concerned about developing dollars and tax base for this property, and that and that this is a very key piece of property in downtown. And the downtown will continue to develop. I imagine that all of the surface lots will eventually somehow be developed on, one way or the other, in the Main Street to Baraga to downtown area. And I'm in agreement with that. I enjoy that. I think it's very important for the city to develop it well and develop it in a cautious and planned out manner. It's a big property, but it's not a really big property. And if a 5-story property goes on this property, it's interesting what that would create. And that's why I say I don't know what is going to be projected here, proposed here. There's a mixed-use development, so I think it's important for the developer to come with some more definitive terms before the city sells them the property. I'm very interested in this property also. I'm happy to take the appraised value. It's not an issue at all. And the terms are very amenable to a developer. So I just want you to be aware of that, and patience is a virtue. I don't think things have to be dealt with right away. I talked with City Manager Angeli 6 months ago after our first meeting. We had another meeting after that, and I'm in the process of trying to get something finished proposal-wise, and I think I'm almost there. So I just would like the commission to be aware of what this property is actually valued at and what it should be done with. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lasich, did you wish to address us?
I happen to love our mining journal. I'm so grateful for the mining journal. I think they do an amazing job. I don't always necessarily like what they're reporting, but I'm grateful. So I was really not paying attention to this until it was in tonight's paper. I want it to be known that I have no personal investment, nor am I closely related to any downtown business, or am I related to any individual involved in any of the downtown business district. I've been a Marquette City resident for over 60 years, and in that span of time, I have watched downtown flourish, and I have watched it wane. And parking is imperative. I did, surprisingly, when I read this, one of the thoughts that came to mind for me was water, and the amounts of water that we've had around, and had the good fortune to be sitting beside Robert Kulishek when he came in this evening and mentioned that, and he started filling me in on some particulars with which I'm not familiar. So it is a concern, and I think it needs to be a concern for you all. I don't ask that you give me an answer to this right now, but this is probably as much as anything is what has brought me here. The downtown business area is really pressed for parking. And one of the things that is stated within the Mining Journal's article is that this particular building is going to provide public underground parking as a part of the structure. And yet at the same time, you have retail space, a dining area, office, and residential components, and it would seem to me that's not going to be available parking space. But I don't know. I'm simply reading what is here, and I'm not qualified to make a judgment on that, if it's an appropriate judgment whatsoever. But I think you need to consider it. I am concerned that whatever properties are available, that there be a fair playing field on the acquisition of those. Again, I have no relationship with anyone in any possible manner. I'm simply one of those individuals who had the good fortune to come to Marquette when I was about 23 years of age, because I married a great guy from here. And I've always said that the greatest gift other than himself that he ever gave to me was our 3 children and the opportunity to live in Marquette, Michigan. I happen to love it here. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. Ms. Lang, did you wish to address us?
I'd just like to make a couple comments on behalf of the DDA board. And I also agree with Mrs. Lashes that I love living here. I've been here 20 years. And I obviously enjoy my job. And I think we're going to see more of this. I think that there needs to be a plan for future sale of what we call infill. What infill is taking underutilized properties and rebuilding on those. In this case, it's a parking lot that mostly serves downtown employees. There's about 70 spaces there. And the DDA board has formally approved this project in concept. With the caveat that we do work with Viridia, that we approve the plans, or at least in concept approve the plans. I know the DDA doesn't really have the authority to do so, but that they will work with us. We are concerned about the parking situation as we move through the process, but we also know that Viridia will work with us. We have faith in them to do that. And we also know as a board, as an authority, as a city, that as we develop, this obviously is what we want rather than urban sprawl. We're rebuilding on properties where through the years our parking requirements force people to tear down buildings to build parking lots, and we are working to reverse that, turn these into taxable properties. So we're going to continue to monitor this parking situation. I look probably in the next 5 to 10 years, if not sooner, to start to identify locations for an additional parking structure that will serve the downtown constituents, our visitors. And really, I know it's hard to believe, but a parking problem is really a good problem to have. That means that we're vital. That means that we're using our properties. We do monitor it. We're at about a 75% occupancy rate right now with our parking. So I do assure you that the DDA, as we manage the parking, we will work through this. And so we look forward to seeing continued investment in our downtown district. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think I have gotten everyone who requested to speak except for Mr. Mahaney. So, Mr. Mahaney, would you care to address us?
Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners, City staff, thank you for the chance to present to you tonight. You can tell I need some technical assistance. I need 2 technical assistants.
His technical assistance needed assistance.
Okay. My name is Bob Mahaney. Our offices are located, Verde Group offices are located at 857 West Washington Street here in Marquette. With me is Michelle Thomas, our Director of Development. We're here to talk about our proposed project at 3rd and Main. I want to thank you for, first of all, city staff for the work that they've done with us up to this point in time in developing this plan for this property. I also want to thank the citizens that spoke earlier tonight and express their concerns, and we'll try to respond to those concerns during this presentation. And of course, would welcome any questions you have. So with that, we've prepared a little presentation. Out of respect for your time, we'll try to keep this brief. So this is the a Google map view of the site. It's the southeast corner of 3rd and Main. It's currently a surface parking lot containing, I believe, 70 parking spaces at last count. 70? 72, excuse me. Why don't we go to the next slide? Some of the highlights about our development, our plans, up to approximately 50,000 square foot building that would be above ground, 2 levels of underground parking, below that would provide up to 84 parking stalls. Those 50,000 square feet above ground would be contained on 5 floors. That's what is allowed by current zoning. We've used a very conservative timeline here of 5 years to get this property fully developed. I would rather err on the conservative side with respect to any development type timelines. Development is a function of the market. It's a function of a lot of things that are outside of our control. Obviously, we would like to see this property developed sooner than later, but our plans, and as Mr. Veer mentioned, there is a 5-year window for development on this property. All these plans, of course, are going to be contingent upon feasibility studies and due diligence. There's a fair amount of due diligence that has to be done on this site. We want to make sure that we get it right, especially when you're doing underground parking. And we have experience in this and learned some good lessons, if you will, that can be applied through the Liberty Way project, where we also did underground parking. And coincidentally, that underground parking was done in a very wet area, and we were able to deal with the on-site underground water situation at Liberty Way very successfully. Next is this is the current conceptual rendering of the building. I want to emphasize that this is conceptual. I can guarantee you that the final building will look different from this, because they always do. We have a lot of thoughts and ideas in our shop and with the architects that we're kicking around. We really want this building to try to complement historic downtown Marquette architecture. We're looking for some good sandstone elements to introduce into the design. But at the same time, we don't want to just try to copy what's downtown. We want to recognize that, you know, this is 2018, and we want to build and make use of some of the wonderful exterior, especially exterior building materials that are available today that weren't available even 5-10 years ago. Did I say that was conceptual, that drawing? Okay. Here's the economic impact. We just tried to summarize quickly what the impact potential can be. I'll let the experts and city staff calculate the revenue to the city from this, but total investment could be up to $12 million if we build the 50,000 above ground and the 2 levels below ground. Depending on market conditions and demand for residence versus office, we could have, on the low end, 30 new residences. On the high end, we could have at least 60 new residences in this building, which residences, which equates to roughly 40 to 150 new residents living in on this site. Obviously, it creates construction jobs. For construction jobs, as we all know, are temporary. In our view, the more important job fact to focus on is the permanent jobs. And just as at Liberty Way, where we recognized, I think today we're up to about 250 on-site full-time jobs. We anticipate this building to provide up to 150 full-time on-site jobs. We've had some interest, nothing that we can really speak about tonight, in commercial businesses coming to this site. We feel pretty good about the prospects for both residential and commercial demand on this site. So with that, the second to last bullet point, we think this will bring new business into downtown. And going back to Ms. Lang's comment about vitality, new business, there's nothing better for vitality than getting some new business down to come in and bring new new consumers, if you will, into downtown. The last point that I want to make, and this is a qualitative point, I recognize, but we think that there's very good spillover potential, as we call it, with respect to this project. And it's similar to what we experienced at Liberty Way. From my office at Liberty Way in the M-Bank building, I can look out and I can see, I think it's 9 different projects that I can see up and down the Washington Street corridor. Sorry. Up and down the Washington Street corridor that occurred after we broke ground on Liberty Way. And we take a lot of pride in that. And we're not saying that we should take the credit for that. I think that's something the entire community should take credit for. And probably the folks that should take the most credit are the Brownfield Authority, because Liberty Way would not have happened were it not for the Brownfield Authority. But we really feel that there's a lot of opportunity in the adjacent area around 3rd and Main to have some similar redevelopment, development infill occur. Yeah.
Oh, wow, I'm not.
So again, some of the building features, they've been touched on briefly. The building would be Class A construction, in other words, premium construction. Our vision for the ground floor is to have a marketplace and dining concept, kind of an open floor plan. And if you think of, the way I describe it is, think of it as a year-round farmer's market that's indoors. And part of that would be food kiosks, part of it would be literally, market stands that some of our local, farm-to-table farmers could use and rent, or sell their goods in. We want to use this also as a place where starting foodie entrepreneurs, if you will, can have a chance with low cost, low risk opportunities to introduce their wares. Why don't we go to that? This gives you an idea. These are just these 4 photos along the top are just from similar developments around the country. And Michelle and I and some of our team have been going around the country talking to folks that have developed these and exploring this idea. I was just out at one in Missoula, Montana, last week. And we just know this will work. This will be a home run in Marquette, we feel. And it'll create some vibrancy into downtown that we think isn't there, and it'll have a spillover effect again for all the downtown restaurants and businesses. If we can better establish downtown Marquette as a place to go for food and entertainment, everybody wins, in our opinion. Can we go back to the other, backwards? There. So restaurants, coffee shops, obviously, and then residential lofts and commercial office. Yeah, I guess I'm just repeating now. These are the floor plans for each floor of the building, and again, these are very conceptual, guaranteed to change, but we think the building footprint itself, I mean, the interior walls and things will change, and maybe a little bit on the exterior, but this is the general concept, and this is the first floor plan. It's hard to read, but it just shows the open area for the food market, potentially a coffee shop, and then on the northeast corner, a sit-down restaurant. You can also see on the southeast corner is the ramp down into the underground parking garage. So you'd enter the parking garage off of Main Street, come down the east border of the property, and drive down the parking ramp. Some people have expressed concern about snow and ice on these parking ramps. We would do the same that we did at Liberty Way. These are heated concrete pads so that snow and ice can't build up, and you have a safe ingress, egress for this. There's also some outdoor seating area along 3rd Street. We think that's really important, and obviously we want to maximize the building footprint. This is urban, and at the same time we want to have some outdoor seating area and create a real strong street scene presence. Here's the first, no, this is the lowest level of the basement plan. Is that correct, Josh? -2 is, let's go to -1. So this is the first level that you come into in the underground parking. It's pretty straightforward. You come in, it's kind of a U-shaped deal. This level has 40 parking stalls on it. And now if we go to -2, this has 44 on it, if I remember correctly. But I know the total adds up to 84. And then, did we have any other? Just this one. Oh, this just shows a little more detail about how the ground floor retail would be set up. Probably more detail than you care to see, but we thought we'd put it in there. Just quickly, with respect to the concern about stormwater flooding, we obviously any plans that we would put together will have to go past Planning Commission and past County Resource Management or the building codes, and those would be drawn up by engineers. And the experts out in the audience, our architect Josh Dawson can confirm this, but we're going to be required to retain on site and effectively to get into the stormwater system any moisture that lands on this property. So we can't run it off. Is that correct? So there's a good potential here that we would actually help to mitigate the existing problem or at least reduce its impact. That certainly would be our goal. And again, specific engineering plans would be presented to Planning Commission and County Building Codes at the appropriate time. Parking concerns, there's 72 right now. Our plan is for 84. We feel that that's a step in the right direction. It doesn't solve the downtown parking problem, but at least we're not reducing parking through this plan. And most of this, per the agreement, the majority of these parking spaces would need to be remain open to the public. I guess with that, I will end my comments and welcome any questions you might have.
My question is, should we make the motion first and discuss it, or should we discuss it first? What's most appropriate? City attorney, parliamentarian? All right. We're going to make the motion first. Then if we have questions at that time, so why don't you stay there?
Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Could I just ask that if a motion is made that it includes the language that I left out of the cover sheet, but if it could include that any sale proceeds be put into reserve to be utilized to reduce or pay off city bond debt.
Yes, City Clerk, you have that, do you not? You'll read it? Okay. Okay, at this point, we need a motion. Who would care to make the motion? Commissioner Plort.
Your Honor, I move that we as the City Commission adopt the resolution of sale and direct the city manager and attorney to complete the sale and proceeds of the sale be placed in a reserve fund as the city manager directs.
Thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner Stonehouse. We'll start with discussion. Commissioner Plort, anything?
Very exciting plans. The idea of developing this property came up about 8 months ago. The beginning of the idea came up about 8 months ago. Yes, Mr. Veers, you talked about having a plan as well. This action allows the city manager and the attorney to complete the sale on something that we see actual plans with. The Veridia Group doesn't have a history. They have a proven situation where you can see what they've done and in effect, I guess they do have a history, but you can drive around and see what they've actually done. And so I personally, as a commissioner, like what the Veridia Group has done. I like the plans, and I think that's something that we should do.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Stonehouse.
I can only second what Commissioner Plort has said. I'm very excited about the project. I think it brings a great deal of positive vibe, I guess, to downtown Marquette. The potential is there. It's a nice project in a lot of ways, and I mean that not just because of what it will look like, and I have every faith that it will blend in very well with what we have downtown and really pay homage in a way, I think, to the architecture of the city, but certainly still continue to look forward. Marquette is a wonderful place because we understand our past, and we
we really relish that, and we hold on to it. We live in the present, but we're not afraid to look into the future. And this building represents that future that we're moving to. So again, very supportive of it. I certainly thank the Viridia Group for coming forward and be willing to really have this kind of faith in the city of Marquette to put their money into a project like this. So thank you.
Commissioner Frazier?
What are your plans? I mean, obviously, I know you're going to build underground parking for everybody, but are you going to do like the DDA does the parking ramp, have like reserved spaces for the people that work in your building, or what? You know, you're kind of still too early to tell right now. But say if you do an underground parking garage, it's supposed to be open to everybody. Are you going to have like designated spots for like certain people that work in the building? Like DDA has, you know, parking for that area for certain people. Just curious to see. Obviously, you guys know what you're doing because you built Radio Way. It amazes me how you guys did that, but just curious to see how you guys are going to handle that.
Sure, that's a good question. Similar to our agreement under the Brownfield Authority at Liberty Way, we're required to leave a certain percentage, in that case, open to the public. It doesn't mean that it's free parking, and I should point out that today I don't believe it's free parking there on the surface parking lot that exists. So, you know, we'll probably, not probably, we will. We've been in discussions with the DDA prior to now, and we'll continue those conversations and work something out that, number one, ensures that there's public access, and we're required to provide public access per the agreement that's before you tonight. As far as designating specific spots, I can tell you that our practice is we really discourage that. That's just not efficient use of parking, you know, valuable parking spaces. So our inclination as a company, in wherever we can, sometimes our tenants overrule us, is to leave as much of the parking undesignated and open to whoever, you know, kind of a first come, first serve basis for whoever's using the building at that particular time. And that's what we'd endeavor to do.
Commissioner Schlegel.
I just want to, I got to say it at least because, you know, parking is parking. You've got 150 potential people in this building, 84 parking spaces, and that doesn't include customers. It's just something that, you know, whether this is the time for the DDA to really kind of get a little bit more serious about that parking ramp option. I know it's been on the radar for a while, but I would imagine that as more of this in-building occurs, it's going to put the pressure even more so in place. I think it's great that you've incorporated 84. Thank you for that to start. And I think that I'm excited about the project as a whole, but I also am very aware of how much pressure that's going to put on just, you know, being a walkable, bikeable community is very important to us. But at the same time, we've got to be able to get our people in and out and allow for handicap accessible, all those things that are so important to to that group and the older folks as well. Let's keep everybody in mind and just make sure that, you know, if there's an extra spot that we can get, then we'd like to get that extra spot. Or if it's working in conjunction with the DDA to lead to the next generation of parking ramp in the area, then you know, that may be the time to talk to them and say, hey, is there anything that we can, you know, keep in mind for the next 5 years in what you've gotten planned with this new conception. So that's all. Thank you. It's really exciting. Thanks.
Thank you.
If I were to have a concern, I would be agreeing with what others have said, that right now you have 72 parking spaces and you're going to go up to 84, which is only an increase of 12. And you're going to put a 5-story building there with a lot of people. It just doesn't seem like there's enough parking spaces. We can always live with it, but gosh, it'd be nice if you had 184 parking places. But, you know, there's a need. I mean, Marquette is famous for no parking downtown. And it's hard to find a place to park. But so it'd be nice to have more parking. to only increase it by 12 parking places, hopefully that'll alleviate the problem, but that's just a small concern. I agree, I like the project. I think that Viridia has a proven track record. If they're gonna do something, they're gonna do it. They've got the financing, they follow through, they're on schedule. So I don't have a doubt that what you're gonna do is a very good plan. And I think it'll be a great development for downtown. I mean, the spot's there, it's perfect. I can appreciate Mr. Veer wanting to have has plans. I'm sure he could do a job if he had more planning done by now. It's just that the Viridia Group is so far along in the procedure here that we have to give you the most consideration. So I like your plan, and I'm probably going to vote for it. So I'm asking anybody else any other comments? Commissioner Reynolds.
Well, I appreciate all the resident comments, especially to Mr. Kulishek. I wouldn't have thought of that in particular and that issue, but I think that it'll continue to arise throughout the future. And also to Ms. Lassich, everything you said was exactly what I was thinking. As to I've pressed for parking, I think that's actually less parking because I think these beautiful conceptual drawings are going to tell us that people are going to go there. There's going to be people going to somewhere cool like this. And I think you definitely know that, wanting to grow this business and buy this property, people are going to go there. And I do have the same concerns as Commissioner Slagle as far as parking, but I don't necessarily have that answer as well. And as to Mr. Veer, who's been also a great advocate for Marquette and continues to do good work here, I'm not sure this is exactly what needs to be in this location, but I'm very excited for what you guys are going to be doing here. So myself, I wish we had everybody come forward with a bunch of ideas and we could look through them all and decide what would be the coolest for that location. But right now we have somebody here willing to do something really cool in this space, and I think this is going to add something to Marquette.
Thank
you. Okay, seeing more discussion down here. Commissioner Smith.
I was just going to echo what's already been said. I don't have anything wildly different than anything that anyone said already, except that I do think that it will add something to downtown. I've been worried about parking downtown for a while. I like Mana's plan to maybe add another structure, and I'm hoping maybe we can look at speeding that up a little. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Stonehouse.
Let me just make one last comment, if I can, on parking. We have a choice. We either make every available piece of flat land, we cover it with asphalt, we put white lines on, and we call it a parking lot. So we can mimic Walmart, and we can have this huge parking lot that everybody can go park in. Or we button it up, and we suck it up, and we build a parking structure somewhere downtown that can handle the traffic that we're currently getting. Because we can't have it both ways. And I would rather have a problem right now parking downtown because it shows that people want to be there, as opposed to worry about not having enough spaces here, there, the other time, or whatever. So, Ms. Lang, I think the commission is universal in saying that DDA's got to look at a way to come up with a parking structure downtown that would assist us with future growth within the core of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. And to my comment about parking downtown, it's just that people don't want to walk 2 blocks. So, I mean, there is parking. I know that. I got some looks when I said that. I know there's parking there, but people want to park on top of the business. So, they'll park in a Walmart lot that's 2 miles long, but,
It's true. They want it, they'll come. They'll figure it out.
Yeah. They'll get there. Seeing no further discussion, we'll have a roll call vote. City Clerk, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Frazier.
Yes.
Commissioner Plourd.
Yes.
Commissioner Reynolds.
Yes.
Commissioner Schlegel.
Yes.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stonehouse.
Yes.
Mayor Campana.
Yes, that carries 7-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we move to new business, of which we have 4 items tonight. First item is computer replacement lease agreement. City Clerk, would you please give us some background on that?
Thank you, Mayor. Background. The lease for the city's desktop, laptop computers, and peripherals is expiring soon. A request for proposals was released on June 8, 2018, seeking proposals to lease new computers for a 48-month lease term. 3 companies submitted proposals, and CompuDyne submitted the lowest bid meeting specifications. CCA Financial is the leasing company the city is currently using to lease our computer equipment. CCA will purchase the equipment from CompuDyne and lease it back to the city at a 4.15% interest rate. This is a lower rate than CompuDyne could offer the city to lease directly from them. At the end of the lease, the city has the option to return the equipment or purchase it at fair market value. Fiscal effect: the total cost to lease the equipment for a 48-month lease will be $161,520. The $3,365 monthly leasing cost for the new computers is included in the current year's operating budget for information technology. Recommendation: approve the bid from CompuDyne and authorize the city manager or his designee to sign a lease agreement for a 4-year term to replace desktop, laptop computers, and peripherals at a monthly cost not to exceed $3,365. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have a motion? Would someone care to make a motion? Commissioner Plort.
Your Honor, I move that we approve the bid from CompuDyne and authorize the city manager or his designee to sign a lease agreement for a 4-year term to replace the desktop, laptop computers, and peripherals at a monthly cost not to exceed $3,365.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Commissioner Reynolds.
Second.
Discussion. Commissioner Plort, anything?
Just to say, Your Honor, that thanks to technology for doing a great job with this. The leases are expiring, and the computers that we have are way out of date. And anybody that works with computers knows that sometimes it takes 6 months, for lucky a year, and they're out of date. So I think our IT department did a real good job with this, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Commissioner Reynolds, anything? Nothing. Commissioner Smith?
I was just hoping to ask Todd, where'd he go? The difference between leasing and buying and why we went with leasing on this.
Thank you, Commissioner, for the opportunity to answer that question. To be honest with you, a handful of years ago...
Tell us who you are. We know they may
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I mean what you do for the city.
My name is Todd Caruth, and I'm currently serving as the IT manager. So again, Commissioner, thanks for the question. I would have always been in the camp of purchasing computers. In fact, when I started here 11 and a half years ago, we had purchased computers. And if you look at the downside to leasing, you're paying interest. Why not just buy it up front? It makes a lot of sense. And so that was my original impression. Just purchase it, bite the bullet, get it over with. But what I found, what we found working with purchased equipment, when I started here, we had purchased equipment that we had expected the life of that equipment to be 4 to 5 years. And what happened was each year the budget was tight, and so we kicked the can down the road. When I started, the equipment was 5 years old, and we kicked the can down another year, and I started spending my days replacing memory, motherboards, power supplies, and hard drives. And it got to the point where we had no productivity from our employees. There was we actually kept the computers for 8 years. If you can imagine, they couldn't keep up with the software, the trends in technology. So we went from 256 megabytes of RAM to a gig. What that means in English is we quadrupled the amount of RAM we had. So I got to a point where, because I was a technician at the time, I was taking 1 to 2 computers a day. People weren't able to use their computers for anywhere to 2 to 12 hours, maybe 24 hours, a full day, to get parts replaced. And then we began to just hemorrhage money because we're replacing all these components on old computers. The other issue was once we finally did lease new equipment and got it in, we had a huge stockpile of old equipment that we then needed to dispose of, which we auctioned hundreds of pieces of computers. Unfortunately, I think we got $100, maybe $200 for it. after you spend all that time getting it ready for auction. Costs a lot of money to do that too. Leasing's not cheap. And at the end of the lease, we have to wipe the hard drives and we have to wrap it up and ship it back. But it saves us money in storage. It saves us a lot of money in headaches and repair and maintenance and staff downtime. So originally, I've asked this question multiple times, even recently, but just from the experience of going through the purchase process to the leasing process, the lease has been great because we purchase maintenance agreements. And so first of all, the equipment doesn't get old, and so we rarely have those downtime issues. But when it does break, because we have maintenance agreements, they have within 24 hours, they come in with parts and service and fix it, and we're back up and running. And it leaves us as technicians out able to do really what our job is, keeping the users up running, whatever the needs are. I mean, we keep the city going currently with 2 employees. We will have 3 again soon. So we don't need to be doing break fix every day. So my strong opinion is it's wise to lease. Although you had asked me before I started here, I would have said that was foolish. You know, if you got the money, buy it, save the interest. That's silly. One more comment just on the interest rate. I had requested 3.9. They came back to us with 4.9. I called the rep and said, hey, you know, we had a little bit better last time. Can you help us out? We're looking closer to 4. And at the end of the day, he came back with 4.15. So I'm pretty happy about that. So any other did that answer your question?
Yeah, that answered my questions. Thank you. I really appreciate your answer.
Sure.
Good, thank you very much. Oh, you have one more question for him?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just to make a comment, isn't it true that part of your job is to really watch computer security as well? Rather than, especially nowadays, rather than having to repair computers and keep them running, a large chunk of what you do is security.
That's correct. That's probably the number one thing that keeps me awake at night, is worrying about not just security with the PCs, but obviously the switches, the servers, our entire network and infrastructure has to be protected 24/7. And if you look at our firewalls, we are being hit, the county too, anybody that has a firewall, you're being hit thousands of times a day. People trying to break in, you can see it, tens of thousands of times a day. So it is a constant concern. And so staying on top of the technology, purchasing new equipment, things that can help fight the bad guys is very important.
One more thing that should be mentioned is that a lot of the information you're protecting is citizens' information that the city has.
Well, especially, especially with the finance department where we do billing, taxes, utility billing. There's a lot of private and personal information in there that's the most critical. I mean, a lot of our data, honestly, is FOIAble, but the residents' personal information, that's critical to have secured. Absolutely.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more comments? Seeing none, we need to vote on this. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? That carries 7-0. Next new business item is a memorandum of understanding for the restoration of the Carp River Kiln. City Clerk, some background, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Background. The Iron Ore Heritage Recreation Authority contacted the city regarding their desire to reconstruct and restore the historic Carp River Kiln just north of the Carp River off the existing Heritage Trail. The kiln is over 100 years old and in need of repairs, and the authority plans to build an ADA trail to the kiln and resurrect it just as it was with doors. The kiln is city-owned and will be resurrected on city-owned property, and therefore the city attorney has prepared a memorandum of understanding to detail the items of the agreement between the authority and the city of Marquette. Fiscal effect, none with this action. Recommendation, approve the attached memorandum of understanding with the Iron Ore Heritage Recreation Authority to reconstruct and restore the city-owned Carp River Kiln on city property per the terms of the agreement. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Thank you. Ms. Fulcher, did you wish to talk to us on this?
Well, I'm here if you have any questions, but just a quick brief overview is we want to bring this back to life. It's a part of your city's past, as Mr. Stonehouse has said. But we also want to interpret what a beehive kiln actually did. It made the charcoal to fire up the blast furnace, and that was the blueprint of along the Carp River. So we will raise the funds, we will hire the mason, we will do the interpretation on your city property. So that's our ultimate goal. And hopefully we would like to have it done by October of 2019, but we've asked for 2 years just in case the fundraising doesn't go as well as we planned.
And you will not be asking any money from the city, is that correct?
No. Mm-mm.
That sounds even better, thank you. Okay, who would like to make a motion on this? Commissioner Smith.
I recommend that I make a motion that we approve the attached memorandum of understanding with the Iron Ore Heritage Recreation Authority to reconstruct and restore the city-owned Carp River kiln on city property per the terms of the agreement.
Do we have a second? Commissioner Frazier.
Second.
Do we have any comments? Commissioner Smith?
I think it sounds like a great opportunity to have some more history and folks be able to check it out and read about it. Thank you.
Commissioner Frazier, anything?
Nope.
Comments anywhere else? Commissioner Schlegel?
This is really exciting. It's a simple thing that I remember driving and dropping my brothers off at Northern, 2 ahead of me before I came here. And I remember seeing it out there, and I thought, what in the heck is that thing doing out there? And then it was gone, and now it's coming back. And I think that the Heritage Trail, the committee, everything that they've done for that whole process has been top notch from start to finish. And this is just a neat little addition that they can bring back to us. And then I just thank you for taking it, saving it, number one, and then putting it back up in this manner. It's going to be a nice attraction. Thank you.
Anyone else? And it'll be in an area where a lot of people actually go by. I mean, right on the bike path, right by the Carp River. They may even stop and look at it. And there is parking available too, isn't there? Yeah, there is. That will be good. That will be good.
In your barbecue pit.
You want to know if there's a barbecue pit there? Originally working, it might be. Okay, no further comment. All those in favor, please say yes.
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 Opposed? Carries 7-0. Our next item is the Peter White Public Library, the Headley Override ballot proposal. Again, City Clerk, if you could give us the background.
Thank you, sir. Background. In May 2018, the Peter White Public Library Board of Trustees presented the library's strategic plan to the City Commission. Following this plan's course of action, the library will address sustainability at the polls on November 6, 2018. The library director has been working with the leadership in all service areas to expand funding for library services. So far, the library has been able to gain approval for Headley Override in Chocolate Township 0.2716 mil proposal and Sands Township 0.1712 mil proposal. In addition, we have approval to be on the ballot for new services in Powell Township 1 mil proposal and service renewal in Marquette Township 0.9061 mil proposal. The library would like to request approval to be on the ballot in the City of Marquette for a Headley Override. This ballot proposal will be on the November 6, 2018 ballot, along with proposals in Chocolate Township, Marquette Township, Powell Township, and Sands Township. Taxpayer approval of these ballot proposals would stabilize library funding. This stability would come before the full financial impact of We Energy's power plant closure and Duke Life Point's move to brownfield property. Fiscal effect: the Headley Override ballot proposal will reset the library's perpetual millage to 1.5 mils. It is currently 1.3685 mils as rolled back by the Headley Amendment. The Headley Override will be 0.1315 mils. This millage is estimated to generate $95,000 less the tax captures to the Downtown Development Authority and Market Brownfield Development Authority. The anticipated net gain to the library will be over $70,000 as a result of the ballot initiative. Average taxpayer impact for a home value of $150,000 will be $9.87 annually. Taxpayers can calculate their impact using PWPL's website. Recommendation: approve the attached resolution and ballot language for the November 6, 2018 Headley Override ballot proposal for the City of Marquette. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
Thank you. Ms. Ingmar, is there anything, did you wish to address us on this, or are you just here to answer questions?
I'm here to answer questions.
Answer questions, okay. In that case, we would need a motion. Commissioner Reynolds.
I move that we approve the attached resolution and ballot language for the November 6, 2018 Headley override ballot proposal for the city of Marquette.
Is there a second? Commissioner Plord.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Commissioner Reynolds.
Not any particular discussion. I'm glad it'll be on the ballot, and I hope you guys get the support you need to keep this library going like it needs to be.
Commissioner Plord.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Ingmeyer, congratulations on getting Powell Township involved as well. I know you were working hard on that. And congratulations on getting the other townships involved, because I know you worked hard on that as well. And by the way, something I think that should be said. The renovations to the library are looking really good. Congratulations on that. And so I think the money will be well spent.
Thank you. Any other comments? I think it has to be known that the Headley was, before the Headley rollback, the city originally voted 1.5 mills, but because of Headley, it dropped back for whatever the reasons are for it. So all we're really doing is trying to bring it back to where it was, if I'm correct.
That's correct.
That's correct. Thank you. No further discussion. This is a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Frazier?
Yes.
Commissioner Plord?
Yes.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Yes.
Commissioner Schlegel?
Yes.
Commissioner Smith?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Stonehouse?
Yes.
Mayor Campana?
Yes, that carries 7-0.
Thank you for your continued support.
Thank you. Our last new business item of the evening is the Picnic Rocks Park Safety and Shoreline Improvements. City Clerk, could you please give us some more background?
Thank you, sir. Background. GEI consultants approached city staff to consider possible public safety and shoreline improvements at the Picnic Rocks Park. There have been many life safety issues at this location in the past due to longshore currents. In the fall, on 2017, large waves damaged the shoreline along the park. A permanent solution to these problems should be identified and pursued in order to limit the life safety issues and preserve the park property. GEI consultants would like to pursue grant funding opportunities for the city to construct a wave attenuation structure. This structure could protect the park and mitigate the longshore current responsible for life safety issues. The current concept is to construct a submerged breakwater parallel to the shoreline adjacent to the rocks extending northwesterly. The conceptual submerged breakwater would not be visible above the water surface, retaining the current views, but would reduce impact from waves at the park. This type of feature would promote the development of a tombolo extending towards the structure. The goal would be to recreate a tombolo mound similar to what was at that location historically. Once the tombolo is formed, the powerful longshore currents should be blocked. With city support, GEI will pursue the grants available, assisted by city staff at no cost to the city unless the grants are approved. If the grants are approved, GEI would like to compensate the design and construction oversight of the project. Should GEI not be selected for design services, they would expect to be fairly compensated for successful grant application submittals. Fiscal effect to none from this action. Recommendation: authorize the city to negotiate a final scope of services and enter into a memo of understanding with GEI consultants to pursue grant funding opportunities to construct a wave attenuation structure at the Picnic Rocks Park. Alternatives as determined by the Commission.
Thank you. We had a few people that wish to address us on this. Mr. Verito.
Thanks, Chef Verito. These are my opinions. Again, a drawing in the agenda packet would have helped us, although the description was quite decent. This may be the best conceived proposal I've ever seen on a commission agenda. The company not only builds the structure, but does so using grants that they're in the business of acquiring. Safety concerns would be mitigated, and the wall won't be visible underwater, especially once covered with sand. Of course, lay people like us have no way of being assured that this incredible concept would work, but we're desperate with no better recommendations at this time. If someone has a sounder idea, please come forth. Otherwise, we have little to lose except another half acre of Shiras Park.
Mr. Lutenberger?
Thank you, Matt Ludenberger, 1406 Garfield Ave, here in Marquette. I'll say that, I'll give you a historical background. My mom came up and visited about 5 years ago. It was shortly after a few passings or drownings down at that lake shore. She was interviewed by TV6 and was basically said she doesn't go into Lake Superior beyond her knees. There are a lot of people who do, and on that sense, she recognizes that we should keep this open as much as possible for a swimming and relaxation area. Now, excuse me, again, that was 5 years ago. It has since changed. We've lost trees, we've lost a good couple acres of sand and infill of rock underneath the water line. My concern about this is not necessarily that this is a adequate plan, not adequate plan. I'm not an engineer about that. I am concerned, though, that we might be doing this piecemeal and instead need to encourage, or at least understand what we're going to do with the north of Lakeshore Drive, north of the dome, north of what's now called Cliff Dow. Because the current that comes in there, okay, here's another background. I grew up in southeast Detroit along the water of Lake St. Clair. I know what stinky water is. I know how it's formed. If there's no current coming through that channel right there, what will happen to the water that's on the other side by NMU and by that private house? And I'm concerned for the private house. At the same time, I think the private house should be a partner in this, because you're going to affect their current and their structure around their home. The idea that we're just going to close off the waves is something I've always played with. And let me point this out. Innovation has no qualifications. So if you think of something as innovative, pretty much it's never been done before. So the innovation I had come up with was a bridge out to Picnic Rocks, but a bridge that actually collected the energy going through and was able to monitor it and able to tell the onshore people, like, hey, wait, this is too much, and then shut down and create this structure that will stop the wave flow. Again, all of that sounds innovative, but it's being done in the Mediterranean. It's being done in Spain. It's being done in other locations. We have the option to look forward to doing stuff like this. But if you turn to say we need to put a big sand mound underwater to stop the waves, I might have to say, go talk to the engineers at the, Army Corps of Engineers have a reason for that gap. Please consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Meister?
Would you like me to speak here, or be more question answering up here? Or?
We'll take you up front.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. So, George Meister, engineer with GEI Consultants. To step way back, 50s earlier, prior to the extension of the break wall in the 70s, the current that comes around Presque Isle used to come around down through the Marquette, and it came heading south and heading out to the east. When that extension was put on there, what happened was the current spun around that extension of the breakwater, turned around, comes back in, and what's happened since way back when, and if you look at some old photographs, there's some of that spit of land, that sand that used to connect to Picnic Rocks, that there was, this is prior to my time, my dad was telling me about a skeet shooting range that was there at one time. There was pictures of a Model T that's parked out on this sand. It used to be connected or nearly connected right to Picnic Rocks. To the last comment there made, that gap that's there wasn't put there intentionally. It's actually an accident, and it's the Army Corps has a report saying from the 70s saying this was an accident, that this was accidental from the reversing of the current through there. So what's happened since the 70s is the sand that used to make that area up and that used to be run along the beach past that private house up along Lakeshore Drive has now been carried up and deposited by the Dead River. So now if you drive out up to Presque Isle and you look at the Dead River, you see, it's ankle knee deep, probably 300-400 feet out now from the mouth of the Dead River. Not the way it naturally was prior to that, not the way it's maybe supposed to be. So the concept here is, as the storm came through last fall, I was thinking, boy, what can be done here? And that's not just more piles of rocks. That's one of the things I hate seeing the most in town is the big pile of rocks along Lakeshore Drive to protect the road and the land there. And I thought, what else can we do, aside from that? And myself and my company does a lot of coastal work, and I was bouncing some ideas around internally, and what we came up with and thought would work is this breakwater structure that would essentially extend that Picnic Rocks Islands a little bit. And what that does, and actually if you look at it now, if you look at aerials, you'll see there's still kind of that sand that's trying to form there that kind of reaches out. That's why it's shallow, heading out to the rocks. That's why people try to walk out there. Is when those waves come in, when we get those northeast winds and whatnot, the waves come in, they get in there, they break up that sand, they start moving it around, and then it gets carried up by the currents that are moving to the north. So that island that's there, it breaks some of that up and it protects a little bit behind it and causes some of that sand to backfill in behind the island. Right now there's not enough with that longshore current that's also there, but the concept here is that, and this is used for this particular purpose in other places, is to extend that island, extend that barrier, create a bigger area for that to settle back in, and allow that to reform again. Based on the sand and whatnot that's there to actually move into that area, I would expect it'd probably also include some dredging of that material that's moved down to the Dead River and bringing it back and putting it there to get it going and kind of filled in behind that. But then that should be safe back there. There might be some maintenance, like I said, it's conceptual at this point, and that's why what we're looking to do is get your buy-in that you like the idea, that you think it's a good one, that we can pursue some grants and vet this concept out and see that we can make something work with it. The idea would be it would break the waves, protecting the park from what we saw last October, but it also, by having that sand back in there, which it's, and the word is tombolo, it's kind of a fun word, it's a tombolo that forms there, will block that longshore current, which is what's been the cause of these tragic drownings through there over the past 20 years plus now. So we think it's a good idea, and I think it's something that's in the city's interest. What we've got proposed is a submerged breakwater. The concept is to set the top of that at essentially at the historic low elevation for Lake Superior. And as we come up like high levels like this now, it'd be underwater. Even at that low level, you might see some little bit of rock or something out there, but it wouldn't be like a big industrial type structure or something like that out there. So it's an idea that we think will, in the long term, save some money on restoring that beach. It'll create a beach like it used to be that was safer, I think probably a little nicer even than what we have now there, and hopefully save some lives and some money there. So that's the idea.
Good, thank you very much. If we get further questions, we'll call you back up.
Okay.
Stop. We planned this.
So what you're really suggesting is almost a modified jetty as you might find along the Jersey Shore.
Sort of, yeah. It'd be not visible, and an extension of the rocks there to try to recreate what used to be there. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I just went one quick quote fire. George, you probably said this, and I didn't pick it up. I just want to make it clear: if you build this and it works the way you conceive it to work, people will be able to swim there again.
Yeah, well, I mean, it won't stop anything from swimming. You'd have that sand beach would, grow out towards the rock, so you'd have a larger sand area there. You'd have swimming off both sides of it, I suppose. What we'd be building would be something that'd be out at the rock distance, and it would be essentially a couple different ways of doing it, and depending on the grants that we can get, might drive what that is, whether it's, also includes habitat for fish or something else, but it would be something you wouldn't necessarily see from shore, sitting just below the surface, and it would be at that same distance out as the rocks, and probably extending a few 100 feet or more to the northwest.
Commissioner Reynolds, do you have a question, or you want to make the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Would you care to make the motion, please?
Make the motion. I move that we authorize the city to negotiate a final scope of services and enter into a memorandum of understanding with GEI Consultants to pursue grant funding opportunities to construct a wave accentuating structure at the Picnic Rocks Park.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Commissioner Frazier.
Second.
Any comments, discussion?
Not really. This seems super cool. I'm glad you came forward with this idea. Yeah, that's all.
Commissioner Frazier, anything?
It's a great idea. I'm glad you're looking into the project. I know Mike said before that the Army Corps, when he complained about the lakeshore being washed out by the last storm we had, and the city falling in the lake there for a while, that the Army Corps engineers accepted, said, well, it's kind of our fault. We might help you out, we might not. So I think I'm glad you're doing it. I've never heard of an underground break wall. I mentioned to my dad, who's been boating probably longer than Fred has. Both a few people have been boating longer than Fred has. But he said, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's been well known. I looked into it years ago, and, you know, I'm glad you're right, because the whole lakeshore changed with up and down water levels. You know, the lake was way down before. We had no dockage. Now the lake's way up. Remember the hot pond back in the day was a big curve, and now it's straight out. So the lake changes. I'm glad you're working on it.
Thank you. Commissioner Schlegel.
I'm really excited about this. I think it's a great opportunity for us to, especially with finding some grant monies, to kind of save that area. I was on Presque Isle Advisory back in the day when we started to take care of some of the erosion control issues going around the island, and people were really concerned about the look of it. How we didn't want to see a giant wall out there. We didn't want to see anything other than some people wanted to let the island wash in. But I think that the plans that are available through your expertise will end up making it look very much like, or I should say, not so much like, but backing up to Presque Isle, a lot of people don't even realize that the work was done out there today from Sunset Point into the picnic area. And it really looks great. There's no obvious break walls out in the water and stuff like that. And with the approach that you're taking there, if I'm not mistaken, from my environmental science days, it was like beach cessation, which would cause that sand to be carried down further. You're stopping that from happening. The sand should naturally settle in those areas, recreating those beaches even down further, I would imagine, closer to Dead River, extending those out possibly. I think it's a great opportunity maybe for us to extend our beach line down there and get it back. That's kind of exciting. So I'm sure that, and I'm excited to hear that it's going to be below the lowest levels, things that you're taking into consideration already. It's a great opportunity. So thanks for bringing it to the city.
Thank you. Anyone else? I do know that for years the city has been trying to come up with ideas and the financing to change the wave pattern, current pattern in that area. So what you're trying to do will hopefully solve that problem for the city. And if it results in the saving of just one person from drowning, that would be just the best you could hope for. Hopefully save everybody from having that happen. Any more comments? Seeing none. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? That carries 7-0. Next, we come to our last public comment of the evening. Again, it's a time when citizens, residents can address the commission. Give us your name if you haven't already done that. Give us name and address. I'm going to open public comment. Does anybody wish to address the commission?
David Allen, 805 North Front Street. I just wanted to announce that League of Women Voters will be holding a candidate forum for the Marquette City Commission candidates here in the commission chambers on Wednesday, July 25th from 6:30 to 8. And I want to thank City Manager Angeli for letting us use the room again. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mary Beth Karsten, 1714 Fitch Avenue. I just wanted to conclude my previous presentation on the firework issue in Marquette. Again, want to reiterate, I really think that these new firework mortars that are being blown off in residential areas have become a safety and health concern for the residents of Marquette. When I was trying to seek out help, information, what could be done about this, I do have concerns as a citizen and a resident of the city that when I call for concerns to the police and the fire department, all of the officers that I had contact with, as well as Ian Davis, the chief of the fire department, said, I'm really sorry, Mrs. Carstens, there's nothing we can do. We're bound by the state law. So that being said, I went to the town meeting today in Gwinn, Michigan, to talk with Representative Sarah Cambenzi and said, hey, what can we do? This just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem safe. And I said, I came here because everybody's saying this is the state law. We have to abide by it. And she said, we elect our city officials to help with the safety and welfare of the citizens of a community. And so you need to go back to your commission and you need to tell them what your concerns are. And it's not necessarily an obvious fix, but I do know that there are possibilities. There's permits, there's ordinances that are in place about littering, about noise, about different things that I think collaboratively, if people put their heads together, we have a city attorney that can look at the legal implications of it, because this is a huge change. We allow these fireworks in our city and our state now, and a lot of it has to do with revenue. We want people buying these fireworks in Marquette and in our state to bring in dollars, but we also have to look at the safety and the implications that they're causing. So I would really encourage you guys and ask you guys to please put your heads together and see what we can do about bringing this issue under control and increasing the safety for folks living in the dense residential areas when holidays are happening and these mortar fireworks are getting blown over their households. So thanks for your time. I do really appreciate all that you do for the folks of Marquette, and thank you.
Thank you.
Matt Ludberger, 1406 Garfield Ave. I brought a prop, but I'm going to hold on that. I wanted to mention about number 3 tonight, the whole sale about a property. A lot of it seemed speculative. A lot of what they were proposing seemed unfixed or unknown. And in that sense, you pointed out that we're only getting 12 spaces. I would I would have issues if you didn't vote unanimously for the sale. But you voted unanimously for the sale, and so I have issues. In that sense, downtown, I got a $35 parking ticket for missing 5 minutes on my meter. That means 84 spots or 74 spots could have had a potential of at least $12,000 per year in that lot. You as a city are giving up money is what I'm trying to point out. You as a city are turning to somebody and saying, we know we need parking, but you're not going to give it to us. So we're going to just let you buy it anyways and tell us that it might work. It seems the same way about number 7. There's a lot of speculation as to what was going to be proposed. Again, I don't know what the water plant is going to be like hitting, McCarty's Cove. Are we going to wash out all of the sand that's at McCarty's Cove because we're fixing something at Picnic Rocks? These are concerns I don't hear you saying, and I'm sorry, but a 7-0 vote for every single thing that came up does not tell me anything about your concerns. Your concerns are, we need more information, sir. We need more for this. Listen, this thing right here is hematite and banded iron ore. This right here is only available in a few spots in the planet, but it's also all over Mars. So if anybody here talks about mining is the new future, or we should think about what kind of technologies we need to have. I have more detailed messages or more detailed plans about what to do with this simple one-piece rock than I have heard tonight about a couple of other things. I'm not saying they're bad ideas. I'm saying that we don't seem to have a discussion in place other than you saying, I'm concerned, and then approving it anyways. There is no more concern. GEI basically just got a blank check to tell us it's going to cost us $3 million to put this Tobolo in. By all means, if it is $3 million, we should pay for it if it doesn't wash out the water somewhere else. I'm suggesting more discussions in the public sphere and more of a disagreement is what we as citizens require. If all we get is unanimous acceptance, even though you have concerns, we're not being represented. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you. Frank Jeff Verito, these are my opinions. Mr. Frazier is one of several members who've suggested the only way a critic can change anything is to run for commission. His advice is impractical. Hundreds feel as I do on some land use issues as well as on this board's image. How is there room for hundreds of people on a 7-member board? He implied that commenters have no chance of making a difference. This bolsters the assertion that public comment is a mere formality with this board, so much so as at any other point in the last 20 years. We've seen Mr. Campana and Stonehouse vote to eliminate every public opportunity that's fallen subject to their votes. We've also recorded Mr. Frazier's preposterous assertions for 3 meetings in a row. My view, my being a renter, and not running for commission. Nothing to do with anything. He just heard me say that I'd not join any city board at this time for reasons on record. The few free thinkers who've sat here made no difference. Their single votes against 6 mattered none. So little that I make more of an impact volunteering here. The way this board functions, I'd look as stupid sitting there as anyone. Mr. Frazier means well and has enough friends and money to care less how I feel, but is again asked to get a show together or to please relinquish his seat to someone who's qualified. June 25th, an inexperienced timer terminated my comment at the 0th second. He wasn't to blame because many boards handle public comment this way. The issue again and again lies with this chair who is not on the ball enough to let me finish my last few words, as he's afforded other souls who've exceeded their time. Even more insulting was the chair's reminder to me in advance of my next comment that the limit is 3 minutes. He's so oblivious to what's going on, he doesn't realize I can go a year without exceeding the limit. Does he not recall recently that a doctor was allowed to give himself extra time and received it after his time was called? Too many times we've recorded citizens being treated unequally. A key word that Mr. Campana could benefit from is wherewithal, which he's urged to dig down deep for. This begs the question as to who runs these meetings, the timer, the doctor, the architect, Mr. Stonehouse or Plord, or maybe people who aren't even here. To no surprise, there are 4 openings on the Harbor Committee and 5 on the BCA. So long as they're led by a board that chooses not to learn from its mistakes, we need the whole system to collapse before enough urgency sets in such that we can institute a government with a viable public process. Then our secondary boards will remain full automatically. Finally, on June 25th, Mr. Campana claimed he alone banned consent comment. What then were he and Mr. Stonehouse discussing secretly as I waited to comment on May 14th? I wouldn't believe either of them anyway. They are asked to please turn on their microphones while they speak at a public meeting and not to talk secretly.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Anyone else wish to address the commission? Seeing none, we're going to close public comment. We're going to move to comments from the commission. I would like to start with Mayor Pro Tem Stonehouse.
Thank you. Couple of issues. Really, I guess directed towards the city attorney as well as the city manager. Can we have tougher laws controlling fireworks than the state statute provides?
Yes, you can add some requirements, but the state law does have some specifics that you have to apply, abide by. But you can add to the ordinance or the state law by ordinance.
Can
We
we
might
for-
even have some, I don't know yet.
I mean,
without looking.
can we, in theory, for example, prohibit their firing in neighborhoods?
Well, you certainly can prohibit someone from firing rockets or fireworks on private property. I mean, that's easy.
We can do that.
I mean, the two problems I heard tonight were firing these fireworks on private property doesn't belong to the people who are firing them off, and then the loudness of them.
How about where the stuff lands, the
Yeah,
pieces
that's
of
what I'm
firework?
talking about, firing it where it lands on private
Lands on
property,
somebody else.
that owned by someone else. So that's one problem. The other is the size of the ordinance. And I know the state law does regulate some of that, but there are some things that cities can do as well.
Thank you, because what I will suggest to the commission is that we do come up with a ordinance locally that would be very stringent on the use of fireworks in neighborhoods. And I guess we can discuss, and the folks that put that together can kind of wordsmith where that really means and how we can best word it. But I do think that it is proven itself to be a significant problem that we need to address one way or another, whether we're addressing it through an issue of decibels of noise, or whether we're doing it landing on private property, or doing it because the people firing it might be inebriated. There's got to be different angles that we can use to make an effort to address it, understanding that we don't have enough police to be everywhere, so we can't stop everything. But I think it is incumbent on us to give the officers the best tools we can to control this activity, because it truly is, I think, horrendous that it's ongoing. I would also suggest or request that we consider doing a resolution asking our state representatives to do their job and to fix a piece of very bad legislation, and not to ask us to address it with Band-Aids and other means and screws and bolts and staples, but to change the law the way it should be. And I understand that's a tough pull down state. I understand where the money is, and I understand that that's going to be virtually impossible for them to do, but they need to try. They need to listen to their communities, and I think the best way to get their attention is by a resolution from this commission outlining all the problems we have and requesting that particular piece of legislation be changed. Back to fireworks, I think we had a great display in Matson Park, and I commend the folks who put that together. It was the best I've ever seen in Marquette. And again, my thanks to them. Lastly, we had an incident of a lot of garbage left over at McCarty's Cove after the fireworks. Certainly that's reprehensible in every way you can define the term. The folks who left that are nothing but vandals that move quickly. And the city, I think, needs to develop, and I know city management is thinking of ways that they can do better next year to control that. Don't know what those answers are. Don't know what exactly has been discussed. But I would ask the city manager if he can talk to that issue for a second to let us know where that process might be. City manager, can you brief us a little bit about what the thought is for fireworks next year in terms, not fireworks, for garbage in McCarty's Cove?
Sure. Obviously, we had an issue over the 4th of July, holiday. I think what we had was almost like the perfect storm. I mean, we had very warm weather for a number of days. We had a holiday, and we had a lot of people. And on that particular day at the beach was the 4th of July. Our resources were already stretched, that being the police department and other city crews. And a large gathering occurred, and it was, at the time, we were attempting to manage it. And obviously after everybody left, there was quite a mess. Our general policy or attitude towards beachgoers are, if the less we do to interfere with their fun time on the beach, the better off we all are. And this is one case where maybe we need to take a different look. But going into the future, a couple of things I've talked to the police chief about is stepping up our enforcement of city ordinances that do exist, such as open alcohol on a public beach, littering and things of that nature, as well as some parking issues that we also had during the holidays. So we'll be a little bit more prepared in that regard for any upcoming festivals as well as holidays for next year.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Commissioner Port.
Thank you, Your Honor. It was a great 4th of July. Thank everybody that came out and saw the parade and everybody that celebrated. I agree that that was a kind of a one-time thing. And remind people that the responsibility for that really belongs to the people that were out there. I was taught, and I do this to this day, I pick up my mess, any messes that I make, and they should have done that. And at the same time, we all know that, and I thank the city for the work that they did, and also a lot of volunteers that came out to help pick up the beach. So thank you for that. Just to address Mr. Lutenberger, what you saw today, Mr. Lutenberger, is 7 people who do their homework, and I'm kind of surprised that you don't realize that, since you are a candidate for city commission. We get our agenda on Friday, and I personally work all weekend on the agenda, and whatever concerns I have, I talk to the people I need to talk to. I find out what those concerns are, and I have those concerns addressed before I come to the meeting. We don't talk among each other very much at all, if at all, as far as issues are concerned, but I do know my fellow commissioners pretty well personally, and what I know about them, they do the same thing. They work very hard at being prepared when they come to this meeting, well about what we're going to look at, what we're going to deal with, what the public is concerned about, and we do our homework. We do our jobs. Basically, that's people hire us by voting for us to do that, and they expect us to know what we're doing when we're on the board. Could we explain everything? Could I explain everything that I found out about all the items on the agenda? Yeah, it would take about 6 hours. And I don't think anybody wants to really hear about all that, because that's the homework that we're doing. And everybody, as I mentioned, that on this board that I know personally does their homework and comes to this meeting well prepared. So just so the public understands that, we do our homework. One more thing, a lot of tourists in town again this year. I'm glad to see the tourists here, but they still do walk around with their heads in the air. They still are looking at the buildings, and they're looking at a lot of things, and I've seen a couple tourists downtown a number of times just walk out into traffic without even realizing traffic is there. So I urge you to watch out for everyone. It may not even be tourists. It may be people who live here. There are a number of people who live here that believe, with the new traffic markers on the street, that even though a car is going 40 miles an hour, they must stop for you if you are a pedestrian. It's kind of fascinating to me. That's impossible, but there are people who think that that's true. So what I'm really saying is, please be careful, and downtown especially, take your time downtown. And I found out that really going about 10, 15 miles an hour sometimes is the best policy. But one more thing I want to mention about the beach, that there was a big party. City manager talked about the city managing that. Kudos to the police department and everybody else that was involved, because what was left on that beach was only garbage. It was a great time. A lot of people had a great time. And to my knowledge, Chief, no injuries, nobody hurt, and that's accommodation to your department. You guys do a great job. Your department does a great job every 4th of July. Thank you so much for the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Reynolds?
Well, I think it was summed up pretty well by Commissioner Stonehouse with regard to the fireworks. I understand your concerns, and I agree with your concerns. I happen to live in a quiet neighborhood, but if that was happening in my neighborhood, I wouldn't be pleased, because I also have a dog that is very scared of fireworks, and we haven't been to the 4th of July in years because we spent our time with him. With that, I actually made it this year because my husband stayed home with the dog. So he normally works, and the only comment I had about our Lower Matson Harbor fireworks were, I was super impressed with Mayor Baldini being gone. The work that the Marquette Area Fireworks Committee did was fabulous, and also the tribute that they did to him was also very beautiful. So, and I hope that I think that the city manager is getting the point from the commissioners that have spoken, that we do need to look into something, come up with some better plan. I did speak with Representative Kimbenzi today. She said that Sands Township has a different ordinance. I don't know if that's accurate or not. I haven't had time between the meetings to look into that, but they might have something we could look into.
Thank you. Commissioner Schlegel?
I'm going to piggyback on the comments there to Mr. Ludenberger. I really want you to go to a planning commission meeting and understand how this process works. We authorized a sale. There's going to be a site plan. There's going to be a site plan review. There's going to be probably a couple of them. There's going to be a vote that comes to us after all that stuff is done and a recommendation is made from the planning commission. We didn't give anything away. I want you to have confidence when you get up here and you start talking about things that we're not doing when we are doing exactly what we should be. So please go to a planning commission meeting, do your research. There is no $3 million worth of money from the city that's going to a magic beach fix here. This is a project that GEI has taken on themselves. They're going to research and find grant money. All of it, none of it from us. Whatever the grant money can entail, it's going to depend on how much money they get with how the approach that they're going to take. That's all stuff that he said tonight. We're not pulling a magic $3 million out of a hat. I wish we could. Also, with the traffic, I was almost pecked off on 3rd Street this week, crossing at a legal yield right there. I was at the sign, and I almost tapped on the guy's window as he brushed me back with my wife and my daughter as we were leaving a restaurant. Please be careful. Watch for pedestrians. We've been pushing that all summer. Thanks for jumping on the wagon. And thank you to the police department for doing what they did through the process of the fireworks debacle there after people left the beach. And I want to make sure that the Lake Superior Watershed Partnership gets recognized for their work, that they sent crew down there to help clean up, as well as some general public. So those guys have been doing great things for our beaches, including planting the beach grass down there that's hopefully helping with the wind erosion or water erosion issues that we've experienced. So they've continued to step up and help our beaches improve. And that's about it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Frazier?
Great 4th of July, and it was with a few 4th of Julys. And I think there was problems with all the parking. Was with the few 4th of Julys we've had in a long time, we didn't need winter jackets, and the weather was actually good. I remember one year they canceled it because of, fog, and you couldn't see from Ridge Street. You could see it just fine. Below Ridge Street, you couldn't see anything. And I remember a long time ago they canceled the fireworks because all the fireworks were blowing up over Ridge Street and over East Marquette. They worried about the houses catching on fire. The fire chief canceled the fireworks. So it's a good point. People are saying, hey, we're in our neighborhood. That's good. So I recommend, some people said, talk to Sarah Kamenzi. It's a problem with the state law. I think it's good to talk to her and recommend. So the state law has to get changed on. We can look into passing city ordinance. I think it's a good idea. But just because we pass some ordinance doesn't mean somebody's not going to do it. Just because there's a law doesn't mean that somebody's not going to do it. I mean, there's people in neighborhoods that just, they buy, their fireworks may be illegal in Michigan, they'll go to Wisconsin and buy them. It's not going to stop anybody. Just because something's illegal isn't going to stop anybody. Because it's illegal to steal a car or break into a house, is that going to stop people? No. I mean, so it's just a matter of what happens. And as far as the beach, I was at Bacardi's Cove for 4th of July during the day with some family, and I saw part of the beach just packed. And unfortunately, I saw the picture afterwards, of the next day after the fireworks. Probably a great display from over there, but people just left the trash. I figure whatever you bring in, bring back out again. That's just a simple thing. And my parents have a business on Lakeshore, and after a couple of the rainstorms we had early in the summer, I picked up about 30 to 40 cigarette butts. I filled a 5-gallon bucket full of sand and cigarette butts on that wash in the lake. And I was figuring, where did this come from? And then I figured all the water washes in the drains off our roads and then goes out in the lake. I knew it wasn't from boaters because I got lots of friends that are boaters. There's not 30 cigarette butts in the lake. Maybe they throw 1 or 2, but not a lot. But all this comes from people littering on the road. People driving their car, throwing a cigarette butt on the road, washes in the drain wash. So I have a 5-gallon bucket full at my house of cigarette butts washed up to my parents' boathouse. We launch boats and store boats for the season. Just unfortunate. And Superior Water did a good job cleaning up. I wish more people would consider, hey, what you throw out your car doesn't mean it's going to get just picked up by somebody. Like you said, littering is against the law, as Blake our chief police would say, but put those cigarettes out the window anyway. It's unfortunate, and we'll just do what we can. I think we'll look into the ordinance for fireworks possibility, but like I said, it's not going to stop anybody. I know there's laws that, no fireworks just the 4th of July. I was with my dog, parked at Picnic Rocks after the 5th of July, and he started cowering down my car because the fireworks are going off around the area. So, it's not going to stop anybody. So, great 4th of July, and hopefully we get another one like that.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith.
So most meetings I don't have a lot of commissioner comments, but this meeting I do have a few, so bear with me. First, I'd like to take some time to thank the 4th of July committee and city staff for an incredible and safe Independence Day celebration. The Marquette Chamber of Commerce facilitates the committee along with Fireworks Committee, Exchange Club, Kiwanis, Rotary, Marquette Police Department, Marquette Fire Department, Public Works, National Guard, Great Lakes Fireworks, National Weather Service Marquette, Marquette County Sheriff's Office, and the Coast Guard. I'd also like to quickly recognize the following individuals for their contributions: Gino Angeli, Mary Ritter, Christian Verardi, Christine Pasola, Rachel Barra, Anna Dravland, Chris Watson, Victoria Landhart, Inspector Tom Dunleavy, Becky Salmon, Joe Burdick, Ted Finko, Russ Magnagi, Nick Steffi, Nicole DeWald, Sue Halist, Fire Chief Ian Davis, and Police Chief Blake Rebold. I especially appreciated the tribute at the end of the fireworks to the late Mayor Baldini. It was very nicely done. I don't know if everyone was able to see that. If you were at Lower Harbor, they had lit up Heart Tom. It was rope lights, and they had his voice, if you listened on 100.3, in between the music, and it was really beautifully done. I also wanted to thank the residents who made public comments about private fireworks displays over the 4th of July holiday. I have to say that I agree. Our daughter, who's almost 2, had a pretty difficult time sleeping, both nap time and bedtime, on the days surrounding the 4th. We, in our neighborhood, we had fireworks going off about every 5 minutes for almost 3 days straight. I also have a family member who served in the military and does have difficulty with the loud mortar sounds, so I definitely understand some of that. I will be looking into options as a city and hoping that we can do that as a group. Lastly, I did tour the Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority last Friday, also known as the county landfill, to learn about the current state of recycling. I know it's an issue that kind of pops up and then dies down again, but so the authority right now is doing a feasibility study from now through October to determine if the county municipalities have enough volume to move to single stream recycling. I do have to say, after the tour, I have to say I'm very impressed with how they've taken a rough few months of public pressure and they're using it as momentum to change. To be honest, I did not see that coming when I went there. I didn't think I would change my perception, and it did. I can say there's no easy solution here for glass recycling, but I am feeling optimistic about the future of recycling and waste reduction overall in Marquette County. Also, if you want a reminder to buy less junk and buy things with less packaging, go take a tour of the dump. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to throw a few dates out there. Probably going to repeat them, but the Father Marquette dedication is this Sunday, July 15th at 2 p.m. Hope to see a lot of people there. On Thursday, July 19th, we have music on 3rd. Always a nice evening. I'm not sure the hours. I think it's 6 to 8, thereabouts. Right? Okay. And we also have a candidate forum of city commissioners. Will be Wednesday, it was mentioned, Wednesday, July 25th from 6:30 to 8:30. It'll be here in the commission chambers. The 4th of July celebration in Marquette was pretty spectacular. I was going to say some thank yous, but Commissioner Smith kind of hit them all. The fireworks were outstanding, and former mayor, past mayor Baldini was very instrumental in working on the fireworks committee and was responsible for getting the program to where it is now and probably will be into the future. I'm sure every time we see fireworks we'll be reminded of him. Can't help but be reminded because he put a lot of work and effort into it. That was his one of his babies. And I side with the people on the north end of town with the fireworks. I mean, you're going to have fireworks, but sounds just too extreme. I know it affects pets, babies, young children, and there are veterans that cannot deal with this. It's not the police fault. Police can't be everywhere. It's just one of those busy days. And but I'm sure that we'll be having discussions with Captain Blake and Blake Reibold, and hopefully we can come up with something so that you don't have to go into your bomb shelter on the 4th of July. So, City Manager, do you have anything?
Just one thing. My community office hours, Wednesday, Peter White Public Library, 10 a.m. till noon, this Wednesday coming up. So I will be there, and if any commissioners would like to join me, you're more than welcome.
We are adjourned.